back to the Flashpoint podcast with me, Rich Cardona. My guest is James Orsini. James Orsini was the Chief Operating Officer at VaynerMedia. He was Gary Vaynerchuk's right-hand man and obviously still part of that very closed circle. However, he's onto something new. This interview took place on Broadway, and I'll get into that in a second. But first, I have to tell you that I interviewed James before. Okay, I interviewed him before. It went very well, and then my hard drive crashed. Sent it into the manufacturer. I lost all my interviews. I lost family photos. I lost travel videos, documents, just everything. So when I called James to let him know, he was more than happy to help, as always. We rescheduled the interview, and then I show up. James is as cool as a cucumber, as always. Shows me around, shows me where I could get coffee, where the bathroom is. Here's where you could get some water. And meanwhile, I'm just kind of surveying the place, and everyone is heads down doing some really, really good work. We get situated, and away we go. So James has a lot of experience helping small businesses and medium-sized businesses. He headed Vayner Mentors, and now the Sasha Group, which is a new consulting arm under the Vayner X umbrella, is what he is the president of. So what we cover in this interview, I mean, we cover a lot of things. I'm surprised it's only 30-something minutes long, but we cover how he got to where he is. We got to how he prefers to be a COO instead of a CEO, which he was. How to keep pace with someone like Gary Vaynerchuk. And most importantly, he corrects me on how to wrangle a dreamer, which is a very, very pivotal piece for me, and I'm so glad I asked the question. So please enjoy this interview. Again, it's James Orsini, president of the Sasha Group, and subscribe to the podcast, like the podcast, share the podcast, and if you don't want to do any of those things, please reach out to me or on my website, on Instagram, wherever it is, and let me know what I could do better so I am bringing you the most value possible with Flashpoint. Thank you. So James, you are really kind because you're giving me another opportunity to do this because I lost everything. And that day I got turned around in the city, so it was a disaster anyway for me.
The whole day was a disaster.
Yeah, I was just like, okay. So, so we have another opportunity to talk, but it's good because there's new things to talk about.
Yeah.
And first and foremost being the Sasha Group. So we are not at VaynerMedia.
No.
Where are we and what's going on right now?
At the Sasha North headquarters.
Okay.
Which is on Broadway between 31st and 32nd Street.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is actually my first interview in this role.
So you were really excited when I got in touch with you, and you're like, look, like we got big stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Let me get back to you, and we'll do, we'll reconvene. So the Sasha Group announcement came out, and this, like you said, it's a new role. So tell me the difference between what you're doing now as the president of the Sasha Group versus the Chief Operating Officer at VaynerMedia.
Well, first of all, two different companies, right? So it's something that Gary had been thinking about for a while, multiple years. I'd say 3 years at least. And one where he and I had been talking about it really over the past year, and angling our way towards the launch of this new group under the Vayner X holding company.
Yep.
I've run companies in the past.
Yep.
So I was CEO of a publicly traded company,
Yep.
Cedo Mobile. So when Gary asked to launch this one based on some success that we had in our hallways with a few disparate pieces of offerings, but nothing really brought together under a single banner that's, on day one, about 50 people strong, if you will. Mm-hmm. He continues to have a big vision. Mm-hmm. It didn't take a brain surgeon to realize he's got 6 million plus followers, and we didn't really have a product for him. Yeah. He built a company to service a Fortune 500 client base, which we're doing very successfully. But what about everybody who wants to be the next wine library? How do we give them something too? Mm-hmm. So that was the formation of the Sasha Group.
Now, this is a little bit in contrast to what we talked about last time when January 12th, you said last year. From then, I think 45 days, you know, the first discussion of Vayner Mentors, and then he launched it as Speed in Business. And I've really taken that to heart on my level. Like, I've been moving a lot faster than I normally would, and it's just good because you could fail faster. But this was long and drawn out. So what is the key difference between Vayner Mentors and the Sasha Group and some of the offerings?
Yeah, so I'm not sure long and drawn out is the right term to use. This was a series of building blocks put together, you know, and we opened the toll gate, if you will, when each of the components were put together, right? So Gary successfully launches an educational component under 4Ds. We sell out, you know, the last 14 or 16. Check the box, successful. We, unfortunately, your listeners didn't get a chance to hear it, but we talked about the recent success of the Mentors Group, where, you know, we serviced 9 clients in the first 9 months in a plan to put together an offering, pricing the offering, getting it through legal, soliciting new business and signing new business. There's numerous case studies on the internet and through our social channels about very happy mentor clients. And then we had a smaller operation in the Vayner Beta group here in New York, and an operation that had been up and running in Chattanooga for the last 3 years. So those are all the building blocks that you know, my hope is, you know, with Gary as CEO and he seeing me as the right leader for it, it's the right time for this offering. We're going to have, you know, as much success as VaynerMedia had, if not more so.
So the thing is, you talk about these building blocks to get to where you need to be for the Sasha Group. It sounds like there's not a lot of failure going on. It sounds like what you set out to do, you know, with his vision and your execution and the VaynerMedia staff, it's just moving and surging forward. Is that accurate, or have there been things that, you know, just you tried out and maybe it didn't work out? Well,
what is accurate is we purpose for success. So it's a dashboard or a windshield. We don't look in the rearview mirror and say, how did we do? That's the difference. A lot of companies, you know, run really fast. You know, speed without control is reckless.
Yes.
So we want to have you know, speed on the rails, if you will. In fact, Gary says hover above the rails like the trains out of Japan, not necessarily on the rails. But generally speaking, have we had some failures in some tests? Sure. Gary, you know, launched Vayner samples, you know, didn't really take off and wasn't right for us. We, before Vayner Experience, we had something called Vayner Live, which, you know, what we saw was that our clients really wanted to hear about it and wanted it, but really wanted it as part of the overall offering, weren't really willing to spend more to have it. So, you know, we talked about this fail fast, fix fast, learn fast environment. And Gary's constantly testing stuff. He learns from failures. In fact, he embraces it.
Yeah, and it's a really good example to set. Now, when you are being entrusted with new businesses, let's say Flyby's Media, my company, eventually I'm making a certain amount of revenue. Is there a requisite for, what's the requisites again for Mentors and Sasha Group?
So, the Sasha Group will handle companies between $1 million and $100 million in revenue. You know, doing up to $1 million in marketing fee. Beyond that, our goal is to transition them into VaynerMedia. So, you know, the whole purpose of this is you could stay in our hallways at any entry point, right? So whether you're a seat in a 4Ds for you know, $10,000 or $12,000. Whether you are a Mentors client, which is a little more for mature businesses between 2 and 25 million, whether you're a Sasha North or South marketing client, you know, and then eventually become a VaynerMedia client.
So it seems like there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of different entry points, which is fantastic, and that you could have that continuous relationship. Now, if someone's coming and has not, you know, had, or maybe they have a mature business prior to joining VaynerMedia, I go, okay, James, here's my group, I'm making this much of an investment, and this is just coming from my inexperience, but you have to have so much skin in the game, your team. Have you ever been intimidated by what you could or could not do for a client?
Here's the interesting thing. Beyond those, we offer a lot of products here at the Sasha Group, right? Look around, look at how many whiteboards you see here, right? So there's a lot of whiteboard sessions. People just pay us, between $15,000 and $25,000 to bring their team in and noodle out a problem, a stumbling block that they have for them. We're not intimidated because we recognize what these 50 people represent. This is a demographic, this small business is a demographic that is used to be treated as second-class citizens behind the Colgates and Proctors of this world. They're used to being in the back of the line, and we just moved them to the front of the line. Not only did we do that, but we did that with people who know what it is to service General Electric, Toyota, Procter & Gamble. That experience woven with an entrepreneurial DNA is what makes us the right company for the right time.
Love it. I want to get back into you. So one of the things that stuck out, and of course I now no longer have it, but you said for someone from Newark, when you were up and coming, it was not typical for someone like you to go to a Goldman Sachs. Like you had a little bit of a different route, and I know we've discussed it, but I want to revisit it for those who will watch. But tell me, I mean, you didn't just end up here. It was a little bit of, you had to be in the trenches, but it was different. Yeah. How did you kind of break out, or what did you observe that allowed you to scale yourself?
I think the funny part is when people realize that as people accept me here as president, clients and us, when they realize, wait a second, you started out as a public accountant auditor. You're a New York State CPA. How does that work, right? So the answer is yes, I am. I started at KPMG, and when you're auditing, you visit like you're on the road and you visit a lot of clients. And one of the clients that I had at the time was a branding company called Siegel & Gale, and I just felt comfortable in the environment. You know what I mean? And I kind of dog-eared it and said, I could see myself here someday. And off I went, and I continued on various other clients with audits. And then I did what a lot of guys did in the 80s, and I chased money, and I found my way to Wall Street, which, I was on a pilot program. I was a 2-year seasoned CPA that they married in a cubicle with a Wharton MBA. There was 5 of us, sort of lab rat test. Can these guys actually track? Because this is our typical hiring pattern, Wharton MBA, but no experience. And these guys, have some experience. So, and I still remain friends with my cubicle buddy at that time, who went on to great success. So the pilot worked, but I also knew that Wall Street wasn't for me. So,
why?
And I think that's an issue that people shy away from. But it's okay to find out what it is that you don't like too.
Yes.
Okay. On the quest to determine what it is that you really like and what your real passion is, it's like really okay to say, okay, this is one that's not for me, right? So, moving on. I didn't. I didn't like the constant quest for what I felt was the deal. The deal for the sake of the deal is what bothered me a little bit. And it's not to say there isn't great people on Wall Street. There is, and there's certainly great companies on Wall Street. I'm still a shareholder of Goldman Sachs too. Because they are a great company, but just not for me, for somebody else. So the same way plumbing wasn't for me, and it was my grandfather's business, my father's business, my brother took it over, one summer, and I knew this is not for me. And more importantly, my dad knew it was not for me too, so we just moved on from that. But yeah, so anyway, public accounting, Goldman Sachs, and then I got that call. I got that call. To find my way into the marketing world. I started in public relations, and it's been 25 plus years in this space in some way, shape, or form.
Now you say this is super important. You said it's okay to just recognize what you don't want to be or where you don't need to be, But you also said you were chasing the money like a lot of people did in the 80s. Now we're in a time where it's, especially someone like Gary, is making the hustle really cool. You know, like, you know, I'm gonna do this as my job, you know, but I'm not a so-called marketer. I'm exploring other opportunities. But in your time, how difficult was it for you to kind of, you know, diverge from the path you were on? And I think I asked you last time, like, did your friends give you any
how
shit?
Difficult? What, are you kidding? Like, nobody was leaving Goldman Sachs in the 80s. Nobody was leaving to go to an unknown public relations firm that had a single office in New York City called Roland. It was so bad that when I resigned, my boss was like, "What? You're not resigning. Look, you're on a good track. You're doing really well. I want to talk to your new boss. Make sure you're not making a mistake." So that was the first like awkward moment where I had to bring together my new boss, because I called him. I'm like, "Look, I want to come, but
so unorthodox.
I can't come without my old boss talking to me." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, like you got to have a lunch with this guy." So I brokered this lunch, and the two discussed my career in front of me as if I was not there. And the guy from the public relations company said, "No, listen, you don't understand. We are going to build a worldwide company, and he will be the CFO someday." And that did come to pass.
I mean, what did you feel in that moment? So yes, you were kind of on the outside looking in at this conversation about you, but I think for a lot of people to see two individuals that heavily invested in them, one who you don't know so well, but they know of you, and then the one who has worked with you, what did you feel? I mean, does that spike your confidence?
Look, I knew I had something special. You know, first job out of college, which was KPMG. I was, you know, promoted 3 times in 2 years. I've kind of felt like I must be a, you know, pretty good employee. Now the good news was I was always an excellent student. You know, top of the class, valedictorian kind of stuff. You know, involved, editor of the yearbook. You know, just kind of involved. I wasn't a jock by any means, but I got along with everybody, which was very telling as well. So I had a very broad friend group. You know, rough and tough from Newark friend group, elitist at the high school prep school that I went to.
Which one was that?
Seton Hall Prep.
Oh, got it.
You know,
oh yeah, we used to get our asses kicked by them in football. I was Randolph.
Right. So so that world early on was kind of telling me that I seem to have this diversity thing down nicely, and then to watch that dialogue, I was like, you know, I'm a young kid in my early 20s, you know what I mean? And these two guys are basically fighting to have me in their world, you know, and the guy at Goldman Sachs had 6,000 people reporting to him. I mean, it's, you know, he was a big role.
Yes.
And the guy who went to Sasha, both of whom I'm still in touch with, by the way. In fact, I'm having dinner with the Sasha guy and his wife not too long from now. But it was telling, you know, and it started a long path of you know, trying to stay humble.
Yep.
You know, in each step of the way, because you could really kind of, you know, go off track quickly. And think it's your own, and really it was so many others who played such a big role in my career formation. Even now, look at Gary. Even now, you know? So it's still happening.
Got it. I want to talk about something Claude said to me after the first time I interviewed you. I go to her office and she says, "What'd you think?" I go, "I was intimidated at first, but I was like, this is really, really nice guy." I go, "What is odd to me is that Gary is like a rabbit, you know, super high energy. Every day I feel like I'm working hard. I go on Instagram, I'm like, I'm not doing anything compared to this guy." But then you and Claude are just measured, collected, and not slow moving. Like it can't be confused. You're executing a lot, but it's just a different demeanor. But it seems like it's completely purposeful and that it works. What was that like? What is that like for you to work with someone so high paced where you're just executioner, like you have it nailed?
Yeah. So So I love working with Gary. I think I'm a great yin to his yang.
Yeah.
I think he was brilliant to hire somebody like me when he did 4 years ago. It was a big investment at that time, but he knew what it was that he was trying to build, and I like to think that I had a hand in helping with that. But I've worked with many like Gary. I've worked with many dreamers, you know, some of the top chief creatives in all of advertising. I mean, you know, Hall of Fame, multi-million-dollar men and women. The Cito company was founded by a serial entrepreneur who had, you know, 30 or 40 patents to his name.
So you've been conditioned already.
Yeah,
slightly.
but the funny part was when I met his wife said, okay, after meeting you, he needs somebody like you. Because you're not going to tell Tony to go to the store to buy some milk, because he'll open the refrigerator door and go, why is the hinge like that? And come back and redesign a hinge and have a patent and forget the milk, right? So he needs somebody like you.
Well,
you know,
let's stop for a second. So it's someone who does not get distracted very easily, someone who's laser focused. I mean, have you always been that way? And how hard is it to wrangle people who are dreamers?
Yeah, I think it's in my DNA, and the fact of the matter is you don't wrangle a dreamer. We need dreamers, all right? So what you do is you let them run, you know, unharnessed, flat out, and then you work really hard to get that dream into an action plan that can actually then you know, be deployed and do what it was purposed to do. So that's the mistake so many people make. You know, we got to tether and harness the dreamer. Like, no, we need more of them, right? We need more Zuckerbergs and more Steve Jobs and more Gary Vaynerchuks.
Wow.
Right? But you also need more James Orsinis. I mean, because that's, you know, if I had a James Orsini behind me when I was running, you know, that mobile media company, I don't know what could have happened there. You know what I mean? So, and that's another thing that we talked about, knowing your place, you know. I was always a great number two. It's not to say I couldn't be number one. I did. I stepped out. I proved it to myself. The company's still there, so we didn't blow anything up. But it's also okay to, you know, to stand behind somebody and help them, you know, achieve their dreams.
It's there's a phrase that I love. It says there's no finish lines, only starting lines, and it seems like that's how it has been for you. It's just almost like a check in the box. But I mean, these are great accomplishments. Last time we talked, you said, "I've been moving faster." It's like an oxymoron. I've been moving faster, but I'm, you know, even though I'm getting older. What has enabled you to develop your skills further and just really demonstrate a consistent commitment to excellence and execution?
I think a lot of it has to do with taking the time to understand the people around me. It's one of the things I do love about Gary is he accepts people for who they are. You know, he doesn't want to surround himself with 100 other Garys, which is why people like, you know, Claude and I are in his circle. Yeah. You know, as long as he knows what lane but don't tell him you want to play in this lane and then, you know, be in another, because he's banking on you in that particular lane. So for me, it's been, I take the time to understand what people do, what matters to them, and then I try to play to that. You know, whether that's inclusiveness, whether it's, you know, laser focused on here's the next assignment, here's, you know, the time frame that you have to do it, and here's the parameters within which I'd like for you to do it. So, you know, it's fun here now. It's only been a couple of weeks, but I've gone back to day-to-day management of people. You know, you had asked me earlier, what's the difference between the chief operating officer? I didn't have any direct reports there, by design, right? So, and as many times as Gary asked me, who do you need to hire? I said, I don't need to hire anybody. And he's like, but I don't understand. You know, you're not an admin. You don't need an analyst. I'm like, no, it's okay, because I'm gonna, you know, take the time to learn what all these people do, and then I will use them as I see fit. But you know, for the most part, I really didn't have anybody that reported to me. Now here it's back to, you know, a group of 50 reporting to me.
So can you tell me the story again when you had to write something, when you started here, or at Vayner, you had to write something on a board or on your window, correct? And we were discussing leadership. What was the word that you wrote and why?
Oh, impartation.
That's right.
You know, because I wanted to impart my knowledge into those, you know, this demographic. Our average age, I think, is a little north of 27. They're like sponges, and they want to learn. Many of them look to grab 15 minutes with me to just hear what it is that I'm working on,
yep.
or what it is that Gary has set it as a vision that we're you know, sailing towards. You know, I impart knowledge.
So when you now here, you're starting again, so you were alone, so to speak, as COO, now here you are and you're falling back into people management. Someone in your position, what are common mistakes that they can make in the people management side that you don't make, if you know what I mean? Like, what makes you a good leader and ready to impart and to help them grow versus some of the mistakes that people make?
Yeah, I think it starts with humility. So I lead mostly because people choose to follow, not because I tell everybody I'm the leader. You know, when we were doing this, Gary's like, okay, so you'll be the CEO. And I was like, no, you be the CEO. You know, I'll be the president. And I said, listen, you're the guy that's on the cover of Entrepreneurial magazine. You're who they want to be like, okay? You know, I could do everything I could do as a president, don't need a CEO title. And I think it looked like that was refreshing for him. I think it was the first time he tried to give somebody a bigger title and they said no, as opposed to everybody going in grabbing for a bigger title. But you could do that because, look, you know, I have a track record that I could lean back on now. So, you know, I know what I could do and don't necessarily need a title to do it. You know, we meet regularly and he sets a course and then, you know, I execute.
What have you, do you ever go home and say, I could have given Tim a couple more minutes, or I need to make sure I pay attention to Sally, the forever example he uses, Sally. You know, do you ever feel like you're not doing enough because you have a very, very full plate?
Yeah. I gotta admit, I rarely go home with a regret. So, which is a great place to be. I don't leave on a Friday with a lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda. This Friday, I stayed later to get rid of all the coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? Because, you know, usually on a Friday you want to cut out. You know, I happened to get home at 8:30 that Friday night, you know. But I knew I had to do what I had to do. So I left feeling really good walking into the weekend and not, you know, with a cloud over my head. You know, I purpose to do what I need to do in a day. I schedule everything, you know, even if it's writing an article or something like that, I block that on my calendar. So, you know, I'm not gonna like do my expense report, my timesheet. There's slots in my calendar to do everything. So, you know, I don't have a lengthy to-do list on any given day.
You said that really your family time or your time outside of here is very well spent. You're doing the things that you want to do and that you know how to say no. Now, if your life is, your work life that is driven by this calendar, what happens when you get behind? Or do you just refuse to get behind so that way you can enjoy it? Because I think that was part of what you explained with some of your longevity. Yeah.
I have enough buffer time to shock absorb what is the behind. So I could take a last minute request, I can handle a crisis, but I'm constantly trying to be one step ahead of the ask. Either the client ask or the Gary ask, you know. There are many times where he'd be like, you know, you should be thinking about that. And I said, ooh, Gary, I just started that yesterday. So I'm on it, it's not ready yet, but it's in motion, you know. So, and that happens too when you work closely with somebody. You kind of anticipate. You know, there was a great book written by a very good friend of mine, mentor, and a guy who sat on my board of directors called Stuart Levine. He was the CEO of, ex-CEO of Dale Carnegie, and he wrote this book, The 6 Fundamentals of Success. And one of the fundamentals is know what's on your boss's dashboard. Know what's on his radar screen. Know what matters to he or she, okay? So I know what matters to him. Yep. So that matters to me. As long as I'm in this world, you know, what is mattering to him matters to me. And I don't have to wait to hear from it. It's, you know, you should know. Like, I'm hoping that my 50 people, and by God's grace will be 150, know what matters to me, okay? And begin to align to that. So, and you know, I start each day with pushing out and facilitating dialogue amongst my 50. You know, there's a lot of knowledge here. And as long as I can keep cross-pollinating it, what is heavy for one woman, you know, the burden is released when I yoke her up with 2 others who have already had some of that experience. So now you 3 guys, you know, it's your assignment, right? So we use a Rasky format, right? People who know are responsible and approver and support and consult and inform. We use a Rasky format to help move the process along.
My last question would be, you mentioned that, I mean, the company just has an entrepreneurial DNA, obviously. Okay, so yes, there's a COO, and there's obviously all businesses are going to have certain technical pieces to them that just make it go. The entrepreneurial DNA that you have within the company, you get to see it now firsthand as you take on more and more clients that are in different kind of life stages of the company. What about the people who aspire to be in Vayner Mentors one day, or work with the Sasha Group, or be a VaynerMedia client? When you are starting at the very beginning, what is the most important thing out of everything that you've seen that you could tell someone that will, like you said, Gary said, you told him you'd help him avoid all the potholes, right? At the very beginning stages, what to you is the most critical from everything you've seen?
So I went to Claude and I asked her for my own HR representative for Sasha. You know, it's broken up in the past with, okay, this is who handles creative, and this handles account and media, or this is who handles Chattanooga, and this is who handles Broadway. So I asked for a single point. And I kind of wrote her until she gave me that single point, which she did, because I know what Gary's vision is for this unit, right? So 10 million goes to 20, goes to 50, goes to 100 million. Okay, so I know we have to start piping talent. I don't need anybody today, but I have to start piping talent for his vision, right? So that meant I needed a quarterback to house it, right? So I knew as soon as he released that Sasha's there, the phone was going to start ringing internally and externally. So we're beginning to pipe that, and I'm not limiting. You know, there's people who specialize in a particular sector, division, or industry, and I'm still taking it in, even though today there isn't a need for that. But how do I know we won't specialize in pharmaceuticals somewhere down the road? And then I'm going to have 3 people in my inbox who have already expressed interest. I'll do anything to be in Gary's world. I love the small business stuff. You know, I admire your profile and where you've come to be, because they check me out as well. You know, so that's what I'm talking about, being ahead of the game. I'm not going to wait for the ask to happen and then go back and try and fill that. I'm trying to be a step or 2 in line with the vision that he has for this company.
So a couple young guys start a new company, they're trying to scale. What would you tell them? What would you tell them is a mistake that they're bound to make, that they could try to avoid when they're just excited? I'm an entrepreneur now. Here I go. I have some traction. What is something that can deflate them very quickly?
Yeah, I think celebrating venture capital funding is probably not the best thing.
Please elaborate.
So you know, when people give you their money, there's a big expectation. There's a drawstring on that. You know what I mean? You don't get to just run freely and burn it all up and then give a ring back when you need some more. So, you know, part of what I did at COO Mobile was I brought the company to cash flow break even a year and a half ahead of schedule. Now, there were those that said, hey man, we didn't ask you to do that. You know, you should have just been doing more. Don't run this company like it's Procter & Gamble. You know what I mean? We want you to run it like it's Tesla. But I think anybody can really grow a company. Growing a company profitably, that's a home run right there.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we're focused on doing here.
Awesome.
The Sasha Group will be a profitable growing company in the Vayner X world.
Very exciting stuff. So thank you once again. My last question, which I'm going to ask at the end of all my interviews, is who is someone that you would recommend that would be a good interview for me down the road? You
know, there's a lot of smart people out there who are doing some really, really bright things in so many different spaces. I know you actually connected with Mark Cohen, which is somebody from my world. And, you know, I'd be shocked if you don't bounce around with so many others that are good people to spend some time with in this space and otherwise. You know, one of the things that I will recommend to you is that you definitely back this up so we don't crash and lose it again.
Of course.
But I'll give that some thought and see who might be right.
No, I mean, that's what everyone always says, and we follow up and they're just like, this person would be pretty good. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much for all your time again, and congratulations on the Sasha Group, and I'm excited to see what happens every time I'm up here.
Stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, James.